The police officer didn't knock. He yanked the door open. Out of the car, he barked. The elderly black man sitting behind the wheel of the $250,000 Lamborghini Urus didn't move. Traffic crawled past them on the busy boulevard. Drivers slowed. Heads turned. A luxury SUV. An elderly man in a tailored navy suit. And a young white officer already reaching for his handcuffs. "You heard me," the officer snapped. "Step out of the vehicle before I drag you out." For a moment, the old man simply studied him. Calm, silent, unshaken. Then he asked a question so quietly it almost disappeared beneath the noise of the street. "Officer, are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" The officer smirked. "Oh, I'm sure."
Step out of the vehicle, now!
Officer, what is the problem?
I said get out!
He leaned closer. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you when you drive cars like this." Several pedestrians had stopped now, phones slowly rising. The officer slammed the Lamborghini door shut and walked toward the trunk. "Let's see what you're hiding," he muttered. But as he forced the trunk open and began digging through the briefcase inside, he had no idea the elderly man he had just humiliated in public was the newly appointed chief of police. And in less than 10 minutes, every patrol unit in the district would be racing toward this exact street. Inside the SUV, the elderly driver didn't flinch. His hands rested calmly on the steering wheel, large hands, steady hands. The skin on them was dark and lined with age, but there was strength in the fingers. The kind that had shaken hands with governors, signed documents that reshaped departments, and once, many years ago, pulled a young officer out of a burning patrol car. The engine purred softly before going silent. Outside, traffic continued to flow down the boulevard. A warm afternoon sun bathed the storefronts and palm trees in gold. People walked past with iced coffees and shopping bags. And yet, something about the moment felt
Inside
tense.
the Lamborghini,
Like the
air
elderly
before
man adjusted the cuff of his navy suit. His name was Marcus Ellison, 68 years old. Retired? Technically. But today was supposed to be his first quiet afternoon in the city he had spent 35 years serving. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The patrol car behind him idled aggressively. The officer inside hadn't gotten out yet. Marcus exhaled slowly. Here we go again. The patrol car door slammed. Heavy boots hit the pavement. Officer Kyle Brennan approached the Lamborghini with the swagger of someone who believed the badge on his chest gave him the final word in any conversation. He was young. Late 20s, maybe. Tall. Muscular. Sunglasses hiding half his face. But the tight curl of his lip betrayed something else. Suspicion. Or maybe something uglier. He slowed as he approached the driver's window. The Lamborghini gleamed under the sunlight. Jet black. Pristine. Easily a $250,000 vehicle. Brennan tilted his head slightly. Then he knocked sharply on the glass. Marcus pressed the button. The window slid down with a smooth electric whisper. Warm air rushed into the cabin. Brennan leaned down. License and registration. No greeting. No explanation. Marcus looked at him calmly. "Good afternoon, officer." Brennan didn't respond. "License and registration," he repeated. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket and retrieved his wallet. Brennan watched the movement carefully, one hand already resting near his holster. Marcus handed the documents over. The officer scanned them. Then his eyebrows lifted slightly. "Marcus Ellison." Marcus nodded. "Yes." Brennan glanced around the interior of the Lamborghini. The leather seats. The polished dashboard. The quiet elegance of the cabin. His jaw tightened. "Mind telling me how you afford a car like this?" Marcus blinked once. Slowly. "Is that relevant to the traffic stop?" Brennan's lips curled. Marcus held his gaze. "And I asked one back." For a moment the street seemed to quiet around them. Brennan straightened up. "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus didn't move. "Officer," he said evenly, "why was I pulled over?" Brennan tapped the roof of the Lamborghini. "You rolled through that stop sign back there." Marcus nodded once. "I stopped completely. Not from where I was standing." Marcus studied him for a moment. Years of experience had taught him something important. Some conversations weren't really conversations. They were tests. And the result had already been decided. He opened the door. The Lamborghini door swung upward slightly before settling. Marcus stepped out slowly. Even standing straight, he was slightly shorter than the officer. Age had taken a few inches from his height. But something about the way he carried himself still radiated quiet authority. Brennan circled the car slowly. "Nice ride," he muttered. Then he stopped suddenly. Pop the trunk. Marcus frowned slightly. Officer, unless you have probable cause. I said pop the trunk. Marcus looked at him. Are you asking or ordering? Brennan's expression hardened. I'm ordering. Marcus paused. A few pedestrians nearby had slowed down, watching, phones subtly appearing. Marcus exhaled softly. On what grounds? Brennan leaned closer. His voice dropped. Because I said so. Silence. Marcus felt something old stir in his chest. Not anger. Something deeper. Memory. Flashback. 30 years earlier. Marcus stood in a dim police precinct hallway wearing a rookie uniform that still felt too stiff across his shoulders. An older captain had looked at him with tired eyes. You'll face 2 battles in this department, the man had said. One against criminals, and one against ignorance. Marcus had asked quietly, which one is harder? The captain had smiled sadly. Marcus looked at the young officer standing in front of him, and he realized something. The captain had been right. Some battles never disappeared. They just were new faces. Marcus folded his hands calmly in front of him. Officer Brennan, he said gently. The officer stiffened slightly. You read my name? Marcus nodded toward the badge. Yes. Good, Brennan said coldly. Then you know who's in charge here. Marcus held his gaze. I do. The words carried more meaning than Brennan realized. But the officer missed it entirely. Open the trunk, Brennan snapped. Marcus shook his head slowly. I'm not consenting to a search. The reaction was immediate. Brennan's jaw tightened. Oh really? He stepped closer. You got something to hide. Marcus met his eyes. No. Then open it. Marcus didn't move. I know my rights. That was the moment Brennan lost patience. He stepped back toward the patrol car. Dispatch, he said into his radio. Requesting backup. Marcus watched quietly. The wind rustled the trees lining the boulevard. A delivery truck passed. And somewhere down the block, someone started filming more openly now. Brennan glanced back at Marcus. You know, he said casually. People who refuse searches usually have a reason. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Or they understand the Constitution. Brennan laughed. But there was no humor in it. Yeah, he said. We'll see about that. The distant wail of another siren began to grow. Backup was coming. Marcus looked down the street. 2 patrol cars turned the corner. Lights flashing. He sighed quietly. Not because he was afraid. Because he knew exactly where this road led. And it was exhausting. The first backup car screeched to a stop. 2 officers stepped out. Brennan pointed toward Marcus. Subject refusing search. Possibly concealing contraband. Marcus almost smiled. The word possibly hung at the Lamborghini. Then at Marcus. Then back at Brennan. You got probable cause? He asked. Brennan's voice hardened. I said he's suspicious. Marcus finally spoke again. Calm. Measured. Officer, I strongly advise against searching my vehicle without a warrant. Brennan stepped closer. And I strongly advise you to shut up. The other officer shifted uneasily. But Brennan had already made his decision. He walked to the back of the Lamborghini, grabbed the trunk handle, and forced it open. The soft hydraulic lift revealed nothing, just a neatly organized trunk, a briefcase, a folded coat, and a polished wooden box. Brennan frowned. He opened the briefcase. Inside were documents. Official-looking. Stamped. Signed. The officer flipped through them carelessly. Then he froze. His eyes narrowed behind the sunglasses. What the hell? He pulled out a folder. On the cover was the city seal. Inside was a printed document. The title read, City Police Department, Official Appointment. Brennan skimmed it. Then he laughed. Nice fake paperwork. Marcus said nothing. But inside, he felt the moment approaching. Like thunder rolling closer. The officer turned the page. And that's when he saw the photograph. His smile vanished. Because under the title Chief of Police, Appointment Confirmation, was the face of the man standing calmly beside the Lamborghini. Marcus Ellison. Brennan blinked. Then laughed again. But this time it sounded uncertain. You expect me to believe you're the new police chief? Marcus looked at him quietly. I don't expect anything. The wind shifted. The street had grown silent now. Phones were fully raised. Recording. Brennan's grip on the papers tightened. Yeah, he said slowly. Nice try. But something in his voice had changed. Because for the first time, he wasn't completely sure. And in the distance, another vehicle was approaching. Inside it were about to make Brennan's worst day. Much worse. The street had gone strangely quiet. Not silent. Cars still rolled past, engines humming. A bus wheezing to a stop 2 blocks away. but the kind of quiet that happens when people sense something unusual unfolding. Officer Kyle Brennan stood at the back of the Lamborghini, flipping through the documents he had pulled from the briefcase. His brow creased. The paper felt official. Heavy stock. The city seal pressed into the corner like a quiet stamp of authority. But Brennan scoffed. "Nice try," he muttered. Marcus Ellison stood beside the vehicle, hands loosely clasped in front of him. The sunlight reflected softly off the polished black paint of the Lamborghini Urus. Pedestrians had gathered now. Not a crowd exactly, but enough people that phones were clearly visible. Recording. Marcus noticed them. He had seen that look before. The curious distance people kept when they sensed tension between a citizen and the police. He had spent 35 years trying to change that look. Brennan flipped another page. Then another. The smirk slowly faded from his face. But pride is a powerful thing. Instead of pausing, Brennan doubled down. "You know," he said loudly, "impersonating a police official is a serious crime." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" "Yeah," Brennan snapped, tossing the papers back into the briefcase. "And you just added that to whatever else you're hiding." Marcus didn't react. Inside, however, a quiet sadness settled in his chest. Not anger. Disappointment. Because this moment was exactly why the mayor had called him 3 months earlier. The mayor's office had smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. Marcus sat across from the desk, listening. "You know the department better than anyone," the mayor had said. "We need someone who can rebuild trust." Marcus had leaned back slightly. "I retired."
Hasn't retired
"Yes,"
its problems.
the mayor replied. Marcus remembered the long silence that followed. Then the mayor added quietly, "Someone like you is the only person officers will respect, and the only person the community might believe." Marcus had asked one question. "When do I start?" The mayor had smiled. "Monday." Back on the street, Marcus glanced toward the approaching sound of another engine. A black sedan turned the corner. It moved slowly, deliberately. Brennan didn't notice. He was too busy circling the Lamborghini again. "You people always think money makes you untouchable," he muttered. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "You people?" Brennan shrugged. "You know what I mean." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Yes, I do." The black sedan rolled to a stop behind the patrol cars. The driver stepped out first, a tall woman in a dark uniform. Her eyes immediately scanned the scene, then landed on Marcus. Her posture straightened instantly. She hurried forward. "Sir." The word cut through the air like a bell. Officer Brennan turned. Confusion flickered across his face. The woman stopped in front of Marcus and gave a crisp salute. "Deputy Chief Alvarez," she said. "We were wondering where you were." The phones around the scene lifted higher. Marcus gave a small nod. "Traffic stop," he said calmly. Alvarez looked from Marcus to Brennan to the open trunk. Her expression hardened. "Officer," she said slowly, turning to Brennan. "Yes," Brennan replied. "Do you know who this is?" Brennan rolled his eyes. "He claims he's the police chief." Deputy Chief Alvarez didn't smile. She didn't laugh. Instead, she spoke in a voice that suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. "He doesn't claim it." She stepped slightly aside. "This is Chief Marcus Ellison." The words landed like thunder. For a moment, Brennan didn't react.
Other officers
Then
who
he
had
arrived
chuckled.
earlier
Yeah,
were
right.
suddenly very still. One of them whispered under his breath. "Oh no." Brennan noticed. "Wait," he said slowly. "What?" Alvarez folded her arms. "Chief Ellison was officially sworn in this morning." She gestured to the briefcase. "The documents you're holding?" She stepped closer. "They're real." Brennan looked at Marcus again. Really looked this time. The calm posture, the steady eyes, the quiet authority, and suddenly the pieces began falling into place. His stomach dropped. The street felt hotter. The crowd felt closer. "Sir," Brennan said, voice suddenly uncertain. Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he spoke, not loudly, but every person on the sidewalk could hear. "Officer Brennan," Marcus said, "why was I stopped?" Brennan swallowed. "You rolled through a stop sign." Marcus nodded slowly. "And that justified searching my vehicle?" Brennan opened his mouth, closed it. Deputy Chief Alvarez stepped in. "Did the chief consent to a search?" Silence. "Officer Brennan," she repeated. "No," he admitted quietly. "Did you have probable cause?" "No." Marcus looked down briefly, then back up. "Officer Brennan," he said calmly. "How long have you been on the force?" 3 years. Marcus nodded. "Then you've had enough time to learn something important." The street felt completely still now. "Authority," Marcus continued, is not the same thing as power. Brennan stared at the ground. And the badge, Marcus said gently, tapping his own chest where one used to sit, is not a weapon. A long pause followed. Then Marcus sighed softly. I spent decades trying to make this department something the community could trust. He gestured toward the phones recording the moment. And today this is what they see. Brennan's face flushed. I'm sorry, sir. Marcus studied him. The apology sounded genuine. But apologies, Chief Alvarez. Document the incident, he said. Yes, Chief. Marcus paused, then added, and place Officer Brennan on administrative leave pending investigation. Brennan's shoulders sagged. The weight of the moment had finally settled on him. Not just embarrassment. Consequences. Marcus turned back to the Lamborghini. He closed the trunk gently. Then he faced the small crowd watching. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus said something quietly that many of them would remember long after the video spread across the city. Respect, he said, should never depend on what someone drives, what they wear, or the color of their skin. He opened the driver's door, but on whether we treat each other with dignity. Marcus sat inside the Lamborghini. The engine roared softly to life. Before pulling away, he glanced once more at Brennan standing on the curb. Not with anger, but with the same look a teacher gives a student who has just failed an important lesson. Then the Lamborghini rolled smoothly back into traffic. And by sunset that evening, the video of the stop had already spread across the entire city. But this time, the story wasn't about power. It was about accountability. And the new chief of police had just made one thing very clear. In this department, the badge would no longer protect the wrong people. The streets slowly returned to life. Cars began moving again. People lowered their phones. But Officer Brennan still stood on the curb like the ground beneath him had shifted. Deputy Chief Alvarez closed the briefcase and handed it back to Marcus. Your documents, Chief. Marcus accepted it with a quiet nod. The Lamborghini's engine hummed softly beside them, smooth and controlled. Nothing like the tension still hanging in the air. Brennan cleared his throat. Chief, Marcus raised a hand gently. Before you speak, he said, I want you to think about something. Down the boulevard where pedestrians were slowly dispersing. When you walked up to my car, Marcus continued, you had already decided who I was. Brennan shifted uncomfortably. You didn't see a citizen, Marcus said. You saw a suspicion. The words landed heavily. Marcus stepped a little closer, his voice calm but firm. You didn't ask questions. You didn't follow procedure. You didn't show respect. He paused. You saw an elderly black man in an expensive car, and that was enough for you. Brennan's eyes dropped to the pavement. Deputy Chief Alvarez watched quietly. Marcus sighed softly. I've spent most of my life in this uniform, he said, and I've learned something important. He tapped his finger lightly against Brennan's badge. This piece of metal doesn't make someone honorable. Brennan swallowed. It reveals who they already are. The words hit harder than any shouting could have. For the first time since the stop began, Brennan looked truly shaken. I understand, Chief, he said quietly. Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he nodded. I hope you do. He turned toward his vehicle again. But before getting inside, Marcus said one final thing. Every officer makes mistakes. Brennan looked up. But the good ones, Marcus continued. Learn from them before they hurt someone who doesn't have a camera or a title to protect them. The message hung in the air. Marcus stepped into the Lamborghini. The door closed with a soft, expensive thud. As the SUV pulled away and disappeared into traffic, Brennan remained standing on the curb. Not angry, not defensive, just thinking. Because in a single afternoon, he had learned a lesson that training manuals never teach. Respect is not optional. And the people you judge the fastest may be the ones who end up teaching you the most. Now tell us what part of the story shocked you the most, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Send this video to someone who needs to hear it.